So how much do our spray nozzles cost? Perfectly valid question that any customer needs to know the answer to. But it's a question that's actually quite tricky to answer. The main reason for this is we have such a breadth of product in our portfolio, well over 40,000 different variants of spray nozzle, and so there's an equal breadth of cost. Simple plastic flat fan nozzles, which are the cheapest and most basic of all nozzles, may only be, you know, £1 or £2 each, all the way up to something like a specialist misting nozzle made in something like tantalum, an exotic alloy, maybe £10,000. So there's this massive variation in cost. So it's impossible to actually say, without a very long video detailing our entire product catalogue, what each nozzle costs, but we can give you some general rules to follow and give you some indications of what the likely costs are. Obviously, for exact quotes, give us a shout and we'll be more than happy to quote you for exactly what you need. So what are the general rules when it comes to pricing nozzles? Well, firstly, size. Size is important. The bigger the nozzle, the more expensive it's going to be. Nozzles are sized in terms of thread size effectively. If the nozzle has an 1/8 inch thread, it's going to be cheaper than one with a 1/4 inch thread, and a 1/4 inch thread is going to be cheaper than one with a 3/8 inch thread, and so on and so forth. So size is a big factor. There are some exceptions to this though. Some of the very small misting type nozzles with very small orifices, and some of the very small flat fans with very small orifices that will typically have 1/8 inch threads, they may actually be more expensive than some of their bigger counterparts. And the reason for that is because once you start getting down to the very fine types of nozzle, they're actually a lot more difficult to manufacture. Even though they're taking less material, it's actually more expensive to manufacture them because the manufacturing process is harder. Okay, so there's a couple of exceptions there, but the general rule of thumb, bigger the nozzle, the more expensive it's going to be. The second main factor is the type of nozzle. Nozzles vary in complexity and vary in difficulty into manufacture. The more complicated they are to make, obviously, the more expensive they're going to be. The cheapest and simplest nozzles are flat fan nozzles. So flat fan nozzles typically be the cheapest type of nozzle. Next we move on to full cone and hollow cone, standard full cone and hollow cone nozzles. These are a little bit more complicated, a little bit more expensive. Then we move on to kind of clog resistant types of nozzles like spiral type nozzles, which again are a little bit more complicated still, so maybe a bit more expensive than a standard full or hollow cone nozzle. Then we move on to air atomizing nozzles, which again more complicated still, and so a bit more expensive. And then finally on to kind of specialist nozzles like spillback nozzles and triple atomizer nozzles and things like that, and they'll be more expensive still. Flat fan, hollow cone, clog resistant, air atomizing, and then special nozzles in that order of progressions of expensiveness. The next factor to consider is material. This is a big one, really probably the biggest factor in cost. What is the nozzle made from? So basic cheap materials, which we classify as class 1 type in costs, the cheapest class 1s would be cheaper plastics like PVC and polypropylene and brass. So nozzles made in these materials are going to be the cheapest. Next, moving on to slightly better materials, stainless steels and high quality plastics like PTFE and PVDF. They'll be the next most expensive. And then moving on to class 3, the third classification's expensive materials like Hastelloys and high quality stainless steels, so specialist stainless steels. They'll be the next most expensive. And then finally, class 4 prices, the most expensive, we would classify as highly specialist alloys, some specialist high temperature ceramics in there as well, and even ruby orifice type nozzles as well. So things like tantalum, ruby, specialist ceramics, they tend to get very expensive as well. The next factor in pricing is the quantity. Nozzles are, as most things are, made on machines. Setting up a machine to run for a small batch of 3 or 4 nozzles is there's the same setup cost there, even if you were making 100 nozzles. So small quantities tend to be more expensive. So if you're looking to buy in quantity, obviously we can make more, we can get the overall manufacturing cost down, and so the price comes down accordingly. Now we offer price breaks at 12, 36 and 100 nozzles, so you can get significant discounts for buying 100 nozzles, for example. The price is important. Finally, the most important factor, and this is what our costing is really about, is who you buy it from. Buying from a reputable, established manufacturers that give you the technical support and advice you need around the spray nozzle selection. This has a big factor on price. We don't think of ourselves as spray nozzle people actually selling nozzles. That may sound a little bit odd. What we actually sell is solutions to problems. So engineers will come to us with a spraying problem, and they know they need a nozzle of some description, and we will help them specify it and supply that product. But what we're actually selling is our advice and the technical backup from the quality manufacturer that we supply our nozzles through, like Beak Fog nozzle for example. We offer that full advice, service and technical backup, so the product is going to be specified correctly, it's going to do what it says, it's going to be tested correctly, and so it's going to actually fulfill the function for which it is specified for. And that advice is really what we sell. Typically we would offer all of that advice as part of the service, part of the sell. We don't generally charge for consultancy when specifying nozzles. When it comes to very, very complicated projects, and there's lots and lots of testing and stuff to do, of course we would charge for our time then. But in a typical nozzle sale, we don't charge for our engineers' time. We offer that kind of free consultancy advice, and so that is built into the cost of the product. Now what this means sometimes is we get caught out and people come to us and get all the advice from us, and then they go and source a product from a cheap product from China or somewhere like that. And okay, that happens. Generally speaking, people want to have the security and the assurance that they're dealing with a company that actually knows what they're talking about, the company that's specified the product, and the company will stand by that product once the project is underway. That kind of peace of mind is really what people pay for and why they deal with us regularly and keep coming back to us for repeat nozzle business. Those are the factors that go into costing of a nozzle, of a spray nozzle. We have the size of the nozzle, we have the style of the nozzle, we have the material the nozzle is made of, the quantity in which it is purchased, and finally, and most importantly, the quality of the manufacturer and the supplier, and the advice and the technical assurances and the expert in specifying and making sure that nozzle will work, and their continued support to make sure the project is successful. Those are the factors that go up into costing. I know that doesn't give a precise answer, but these are the factors that come into play when we cost up our nozzles.